The last letter. A creepy midnight message that haunts. On a dark moonlit night, a shadowy figure slipped a letter under the door. The letter, with eerie handwriting, lay there, casting an ominous presence. A flickering candle cast shadows on the walls, and the old grandfather clock struck midnight. The person hesitated before picking up the letter, their face filled with anxiety. Slowly, they opened it, their eyes widening in fear as they read. Suddenly, a ghostly figure appeared in the background, and the letter dropped to the floor. The shadowy figure vanished into the night, leaving behind a haunting memory. The recipient must pass it on or suffer the consequences. Alternatively, it might be a letter from the spirit of someone seeking justice or revenge. The protagonist may ignore the letter, thinking it's just a prank or a mistake. They might even laugh it off, dismissing the ominous tone and the strange symbols that adorn the paper. But as the days go by, they start to notice peculiar things happening around them. Objects in their house are not where they left them, and they hear whispers in the dead of night. The letter, once a mere curiosity, begins to haunt their thoughts. They try to push it out of their mind, but it lingers, a dark cloud over their daily life. The protagonist's sleep becomes restless, filled with unsettling dreams that leave them waking in a cold sweat. They start to feel a presence, an unseen watcher that makes the hairs on the back of their neck stand on end, only to realize that the warnings are coming true. The shadows in their home seem to move with a life of their own, and the whispers grow louder, more insistent. They start to see fleeting glimpses of figures in the corner of their eye, figures that vanish when they turn to look. The air grows colder, and an unshakable feeling of dread settles over them. They remember the letter's warnings, and a chill runs down their spine. The realization dawns on them that this is no prank. Something malevolent is at play. The protagonist's attempts to rationalize the events fail, and they begin to feel isolated, unable to share their fears with anyone without sounding insane. They may try to destroy the letter, but it keeps reappearing. Desperation sets in as they throw it into the fireplace, watching the flames consume it, only to find it back on their desk the next morning, untouched by fire. They tear it to shreds, but the pieces mysteriously reassemble. They bury it, but it returns, pristine and whole. Each attempt to rid themselves of the letter only deepens their fear and frustration. It's as if the letter is bound to them, an inescapable curse. The protagonist's mental state deteriorates, paranoia setting in as they start to question their own sanity. They become obsessed with the letter, spending hours trying to decipher its cryptic symbols and hidden messages, hoping to find a way to break the curse. A sinister entity, possibly the sender, might finally appear to claim them. The atmosphere grows heavier, and the sense of being watched becomes unbearable. One night, as they sit in the dark, the shadows coalesce into a form, a dark, shadowy figure that steps out from the gloom. The figure is indistinct, but its presence is suffocating. Its intent clear. It moves closer, and the protagonist is paralyzed with fear. The entity reaches out, and the room plunges into darkness. The protagonist's fate is sealed, and the letter's warnings have come to their horrifying conclusion. The final moments are filled with a deafening silence, broken only by the protagonist's own ragged breathing. The entity's touch is cold, and as it envelops them, the protagonist's last thought is of the letter, the harbinger of their doom. The protagonist could become the next person doomed to send the letter. Imagine the weight of that realization sinking in, the cold sweat forming on their brow as they understand the gravity of their situation. The room around them seems to close in, the shadows growing longer and more menacing. They can almost feel the presence of those who came before them, those who were also trapped in this endless cycle of despair. The letter in their hand feels like a lead weight, a tangible representation of their impending doom. They know that once they send it, they will be sealing their fate, just as countless others have done before them. The air is thick with the unspoken words of the past, the silent screams of those who have been caught in this web of horror. The protagonist's mind races, searching for a way out, but deep down they know there is no escape. The letter must be sent, and they must become part of the story that never ends. The story could reveal that they had unknowingly caused someone's death, and the letter is their punishment. This revelation hits them like a ton of bricks, the guilt and horror washing over them in waves. They remember the events leading up to this moment, the seemingly innocuous actions that now take on a sinister significance. Every choice, Every decision has led them to this point. The letter is not just a punishment, but a reminder of their complicity in the tragedy. They can see the faces of those they have wronged, their eyes filled with accusation and sorrow. The protagonist's hands tremble as they hold the letter, the weight of their guilt almost too much to bear. They realize that they are not just a victim but also a perpetrator, and this knowledge is a heavy burden. The room around them seems to grow darker, the shadows closing in as they come to terms with their role in the unfolding horror. The letter is a symbol of their guilt, a tangible reminder of the lives they have destroyed. They know that they must send it, but the act feels like a betrayal of their own humanity. The protagonist is trapped in a cycle of guilt and punishment with no hope of redemption. The message could be a trap, drawing people into a cycle of hauntings that never ends. Each recipient of the letter becomes a new link in the chain, their lives forever altered by the curse. The protagonist can feel the presence of the ghostly figures that haunt the letter, their cold, spectral hands reaching out to claim another victim. The hallway outside their room flickers with an eerie light, the shadows dancing in a macabre ballet. They know that once they send the letter, they will be joining the ranks of the haunted, their soul forever bound to the curse. The protagonist's fear is palpable, their heart pounding in their chest as they contemplate their fate. The haunted house around them seems to come alive, the walls whispering secrets of the past, the floorboards creaking under the weight of unseen footsteps. They can hear the faint echoes of the previous victims, their voices a haunting reminder of what awaits them. The protagonist knows that there is no escape from the cycle, no way to break the curse. The letter is a trap, a cruel joke played by fate, and they are its latest victim. As they prepare to send the letter, they can feel the weight of the curse settling on their shoulders, a heavy burden that they will carry for the rest of their days. The cycle of hauntings continues with no end in sight, and the protagonist is just another pawn in the game. Fear of the unknown. The mystery of who sent the letter and why. This theme taps into one of the most primal fears that humans have, the fear of the unknown. When the protagonist receives a mysterious letter, they are plunged into a world of uncertainty and dread. The letter could be from anyone, and its contents could mean anything. This uncertainty creates a sense of paranoia and anxiety that permeates the story. The dark figure lurking in the shadows represents this fear, always present but never fully seen or understood. The close-up of scared eyes in dim light captures the protagonist's growing terror as they try to piece together the puzzle. The fear of the unknown is a powerful tool in horror storytelling because it plays on the audience's imagination, making them fill in the blanks with their own worst fears. Inevitable fate. The idea that no matter what, the protagonist cannot escape. This theme is often used to create a sense of hopelessness and inevitability. The protagonist may try to run, hide, or fight back, but their fate is sealed from the moment they become involved with the cursed object or entity. The person running in the dark forest symbolizes the futile attempts to escape, while the shadowy figure following them represents the inescapable doom that is always one step behind. The abandoned house at night is a classic horror setting that reinforces the feeling of isolation and entrapment. No matter where the protagonist goes, they cannot escape their fate. This theme is effective because it taps into the fear of losing control and being powerless in the face of an unstoppable force. Curse or urban legend. A classic horror trope where an object like a letter, video, or phone call carries doom. This theme plays on the idea that certain objects or stories have the power to bring about misfortune or death. The haunted letter on the table, the cursed videotape, and the ominous phone ringing in a dark room are all examples of this trope. These objects are often linked to a tragic or violent past, and anyone who comes into contact with them is doomed to suffer the same fate. The idea of a curse or urban legend adds a layer of mystery and intrigue to the story, as the protagonist tries to uncover the truth behind the object and find a way to break the curse. In a desperate attempt to understand the letter's origins and break its terrifying grip, the protagonist seeks out a renowned paranormal expert. The camera shifts to a dimly lit room filled with ancient books, mysterious artifacts, and flickering candles. The expert, shrouded in shadows, begins to recount the dark history of the letter. Expert, voice distorted for effect. This letter is no ordinary piece of paper. It dates back to the 18th century, originating from a small, cursed village. Legend has it that anyone who receives this letter is marked for doom. The villagers believed it was a punishment from the spirits for a grave sin committed by their ancestors. The letter would appear mysteriously, bringing death and despair to all who read it. The camera zooms in on the protagonist's face, filled with a mix of fear and determination. The expert continues, explaining that the only way to break the curse is to perform a ritual involving the burning of the letter under a full moon, while reciting an ancient incantation. Expert, but beware. The spirits guarding this letter will not let you destroy it easily. You must be prepared for a battle with the supernatural. The scene ends with the protagonist clutching the letter, determined to end the nightmare once and for all. The tension builds as the audience anticipates the final confrontation with the dark forces that have been haunting the protagonist. Armed with the newfound knowledge, the protagonist and the paranormal expert prepare for the ritual. The camera shifts to an open field under the eerie glow of a full moon. The expert sets up a makeshift altar with ancient artifacts and begins to chant the incantation. Expert, voice steady but intense, spirits of the cursed, hear my plea. Release this soul from your grasp, set them free. As the expert continues the ritual, the letter starts to burn, but suddenly, a chilling wind blows and the flames flicker ominously. The camera pans to the protagonist, whose eyes widen in horror as shadowy figures begin to emerge from the darkness. Expert, voice strained. Stay strong. The spirits are resisting. We must not falter. The entity grows more aggressive, causing the ground to tremble and the air to fill with whispers of despair. The expert's voice rises in urgency, the chant becoming more fervent. Expert, ancestors of old, break this curse, banish these spirits, reverse their verse. The shadows close in, their forms twisting and contorting in anger. The protagonist clutches the letter tighter, feeling the weight of the supernatural battle pressing down on them. The camera captures the protagonist's face, a mixture of fear and resolve. Expert, voice echoing. We are almost there. Do not let go. The flames roar back to life, consuming the letter. The shadows scream and writhe, their forms dissipating into the night. The expert collapses, exhausted but triumphant, as the last of the shadows vanish. The scene ends with the protagonist staring at the ashes of the letter, a sense of relief washing over them. But as the camera pulls back, a faint whisper lingers in the air, hinting that the battle with the supernatural may not be over. Despite the apparent victory, a lingering sense of unease grips the protagonist. Determined to end the haunting once and for all, they decide to confront the entity directly. The camera focuses on the protagonist's resolute face as they gather their courage and approach the spot where the shadows last appeared. The air grows colder, and a thick fog begins to roll in, obscuring the surroundings. The protagonist holds a talisman given by the expert, their knuckles white with tension. They call out into the darkness, their voice echoing with determination. Protagonist, voice firm. I know you're still here. Show yourself. The fog churns and parts, revealing the shadowy entity in its full, terrifying form. Its eyes glow with malevolent intent, and a guttural growl emanates from its twisted form. The camera captures the protagonist's steely resolve as they step forward, talisman raised. Protagonist, voice unwavering. This ends now. The entity lunges, but the talisman emits a blinding light, causing it to recoil. The protagonist chants the final incantation taught by the expert, their voice growing in strength and conviction. Protagonist, voice powerful. By the power of light, I banish you back to the darkness from whence you came. The entity thrashes and screams, its form beginning to disintegrate under the talisman's light. The ground shakes violently, and the air is filled with the sounds of a supernatural struggle. The camera zooms in on the protagonist's face, a mixture of fear and determination etched into their features. With a final deafening roar, the entity is consumed by the light, leaving behind a deafening silence. The fog lifts, and the cold dissipates, replaced by a calm, serene night. The protagonist falls to their knees, exhausted but victorious. The camera pans out, showing the protagonist kneeling in the now peaceful field, the talisman still glowing faintly in their hand. As the scene fades to black, a sense of finality washes over the audience. But a faint whisper echoes once more, leaving a haunting question in the air. Is it truly over? The screen fades to the closing credits, leaving viewers with a lingering sense of unease and anticipation for what might come next. As the screen fades back in, we find the protagonist still kneeling in the field, the talisman dimming slowly. A faint smile of relief crosses their face, believing the nightmare is finally over. But then, A cold breeze sweeps through the air, and the protagonist's smile falters. The camera zooms in on the protagonist's hand, where the talisman suddenly shatters into pieces. Their eyes widen in horror as the ground beneath them begins to tremble once more. The protagonist tries to stand, but their strength has waned. A dark shadow emerges from the ground, more menacing and powerful than before. The entity has returned, fueled by the ritual's failure. The protagonist's face twists in fear and despair as they realize the battle is far from over. Protagonist, voice trembling. "No, this can't be happening." The entity lunges at the protagonist and a fierce struggle ensues. The camera captures the raw intensity of the fight, the protagonist giving their all in a desperate bid for survival. Just as it seems the protagonist might be overwhelmed, they remember the letter, the source of all this chaos. With a final burst of energy, they grab the letter from their pocket and hold it up to the entity. Protagonist, voice desperate. "Take it! Take the letter and leave!" The entity pauses, its glowing eyes fixated on the letter. It reaches out with a clawed hand, snatching the letter from the protagonist's grasp. For a moment, everything goes still. The entity's form begins to dissipate, taking the letter with it. The camera shifts to the protagonist, who collapses to the ground, utterly spent but hopeful that the ordeal is finally over. The screen fades to black, but the sound of the wind carries a chilling whisper, echoing the entity's voice. Entity, whispering, "This is not the end." The screen fades back in to show the field, now empty and quiet. The protagonist's fate is uncertain, and the letter's power remains a mystery. The camera pans out, leaving viewers with a haunting sense of ambiguity. As the credits roll, the eerie music continues, leaving the audience with an unsettling feeling and a lingering question. What happens next? The screen fades to black, the final note of suspense hanging in the air.